Hello, doctors. This is just a quick video detailing my process and how I create a study schedule using my resources. So the only things you're going to be needing for this demo or to create your own study schedule basically is the sources that you want to use for your study and a calendar. So what we're going to do first is decide when we want to start studying. So I maintain that studying starts when clerkship starts. So give or take that you've given yourself about 2 weeks to adjust. I would say let's start studying on the 13th. So I'm going to set that as our start date over here on our sheet of scratch paper. So, like so, July 13th, okay? Then we want to make sure and think about, well, how long do we want to take to study? So we have to read through these sources and make sure we understand most things. So I'm the kind of person that needs more than one reading to understand and retain things appropriately. So I usually like to try and plan everything based on the idea that I'm going to read through everything twice. So my first pass, that's what I'm going to call it, is the first time I go through everything. That's going to be probably about, let's say, 2 months. So I'm going to end at the beginning of October. So from July 13th to, let's say, September 30th, which is about 2.5 months. Okay, so we have our start and we have our end or estimation, so that's good. Then after that, that's when we start to look at our sources. So we're going to put the calendar aside and we're going to take a look at our two sources. So like I've told you guys before, and I've shared multiple times, that I've used BRS Physiology and First Aid for Step 1 as my two main sources for the written Revalida. It's also continued to be my main reference for a lot of what I'm needing post-grad, so I've kept them on hand. The first thing that you're going to want to look at is the table of contents for each book. So I've marked those for us already here. So you can see that BRS Physiology has 7 chapters total and is a total of 227 content pages. So if we write that down on our scratch paper, we'll do Physiology, and it's 7 chapters. Okay. Then we're going to go into First Aid, and we're going to take a look at the table of contents. And we're going to see that it's split into high yield general principles, which is basics, and also split into our high yield organ systems, which is basically your clinical subjects. And then the high yield organ systems are further split into categories such as, which I'll show you here, embryo, anatomy, physio, patho, and pharma. Okay, so we want to take that into consideration. So what I'm going to do now is flip back, and we're just going to do a quick count. So for high yield general principles, which is our basic sciences, there are 6 topics total. So we're going to put down basics is 6 chapters. And then for clinicals, there are, if I'm not mistaken, there are 10. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 chapters. Okay, so this is basically what we have to start with. This is where the creation of a study schedule becomes very individual. It's really based on what you as an individual can handle, how you know yourself, how you study, and how, I guess, like, understanding you are of your own limitations and or your own strengths. So strengths and weaknesses play into this as an individual. I took a look at my own strengths and weaknesses, and I noted that in first year, my weakest subjects were biochemistry, pharmacology, and of course, physiology. So these are the subjects that I started with. So what I did, as well as a clinical subject, so I'm going to explain that for you. So for example, if we're going to give ourselves from July 13th to September 30th, let's count how many weeks that is. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. We have 12 weeks, okay? So we want to kind of plan according to that timeline. How much can I accomplish in a week? How much can I accomplish in a day? And how much can I accomplish basically in about 4 to 6 hours of studying per day? Because of course, on top of all of the studying that you're going to be doing on your own, you still have to complete your clerkship activities. So that's going to be something we want to take into consideration. So we have 12 weeks. And of course, you want to give yourselves about 1 day off a week. So let's say Sundays is your day off. So you have 6 days a week. So looking at BRS Physiology, there are 7 chapters in the book. So if I look at each chapter, it's approximately 20 to 25 pages per chapter if I'm looking at the table of contents. So me being a quick reader, I would say, okay, you could do a chapter a day, or you could do a chapter every 2 days, or I could just call it 2 chapters a week. So I want to do 2 chapters a week for BRS Physiology. So if I do that, I actually will be able to get through BRS Physiology twice in this 12-week span. So 2 chapters a week in physiology. Now, I know that I'm weaker in biochemistry and some of my basics, so I'm going to take a look specifically at one of the topics. So for example, biochemistry. This is also split into subtopics. So for me, because I'm weaker in this area, I would only do one of these topics per day, or half of a topic per day, as long as I was reading biochem and understanding it that day. So we could for now say 1 chapter biochemistry per day, or 1 chapter every 2 days. We'll be nice to ourselves. So 1 chapter every 2 days for biochem. And then we can keep going with that throughout. So you're just going to have to plan each chapter on your own based on how you feel after the first week. So I only plan ahead about 2 weeks at a time, I guess. So you want to make sure that you're planning and making sure that you're getting through each chapter the way you want to. Okay. And then finally for clinicals, this is where I would coordinate with my current rotation. So for example, when I started studying, I was in IM rotation, so in medicine. My first IM sub-rotation was Hema, Onco, Rheuma. So the first things that I started to study were Hema, Onco, and Rheuma. So I went to the Hema chapter, and I said, okay, so there's Hema Embryo, Hema Anatomy, Hema Physio, Hema Patho, and Hema Pharma. So that's 5. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do one of these clinical topics per day. So Monday, Hema Embryo, Tuesday, Hema Anatomy, Wednesday, Hema Physio, Thursday, Hema Patho, and then Friday and Saturday I'm going to focus on Pharma because that's my weakest subject. So in 1 week, we're going to do 1 body system. So that will allow us to get through everything once. And then the last 2 weeks, we can go over systems and issues in those systems that we had trouble with. All right, so that looks like it's shaping out well. Then finally, you can add to this is read 1 emergency per day. So there are 43 emergencies, and in 12 weeks, there are about 84 days. So if you read 1 emergency per day, going from number 1 to number 43, you'll have read them all twice by the time October hits. And when October hits, October to December, this is all what I would call written Revalida time. Intense study time, actually. So this is when you're going to go through all of the other systems, find things that you're still having trouble with. So for me, that was pharma and things like micro that I left toward the end. And this is when you're going to review and focus on those subjects during this time. And then by the time November and December hit, or even just the month of December, like I think I just used December, this is Samplex time. So this is when you're going to start to look at, really study and rationalize all the old exams that you've found and compiled from your upper years. This is when you're going to look at them, look through them, ratio all the answers, and make sure that you can answer each question and know why the other answers are wrong and why you chose the correct answer. You also want to be able to gauge whether or not your studying has been effective. So I would suggest that every few weeks you kind of take a glance at a Samplex and see whether or not you can answer the questions that are being asked of you. And then with this study schedule, the nice thing about it is that it is adjustable. So it's really based on what you feel. If you find that after a week, the 2 chapters a week and 1 chapter every 2 days, that's too slow for you, then you have the ability to go faster and then cover the material more than one time. If, however, you feel that this is way too overwhelming, then you can honestly take it slow. Go through 1 chapter a week instead of 2 chapters a week for physiology. Go through 1 chapter every 3 or 4 days in biochemistry if that's what you need. Spend a week and a half per system instead of a week per system. But the most important thing for me during this time was to make sure that I was covering all of my bases and doing as much as possible to ensure that I targeted and covered my weak subjects at least twice during the study period. So overall, for emergencies, I know I'm going to get a lot of questions about this. I'm just going to say you're reading them. You're not studying them. You're not memorizing them. You're not writing scripts. You are just taking the time to read through the chapter intentionalities on that emergency for that given topic. So for example, number 43, appendicitis, you're just going to read through appendicitis. You're going to read through BLS. You're just trying to familiarize yourself with these emergencies during this time so that when it comes time to make notes and everything, you're not completely uncomfortable or the information and the vocabulary aren't completely new to you. So familiarization and ensuring that you know or have an idea of what you're going to be looking for when you present your cases is very important during oral Rovalida. But remember that this time is for written, and without written, you can't pass the oral. So you want to make sure that you do your best, know your strengths, know your weaknesses, and make sure that you take advantage of all the time that you have. So if you guys have any questions, please feel free to let me know, and happy studying. Thank you, doctors.